Hi everybody, my name is Martin and this is my first video actually that I'm doing on here, and I decided to choose the topic of cryptocurrencies and a little bit of their wider effects instead of focusing on what's happening tomorrow or in the next week with cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and Ether, because I think there is a lot of people out there that at the moment want to make a lot of money with it and are making a lot of money, but there is also gonna be a big possibility that it will crash a lot and a lot of people will lose a lot of money with it that were not prepared or did not do their research in a good way beforehand. Because the interesting thing about in general economics and finance is that when people are thinking that things go up and things are doing well, people think, oh, they will continue like that, even though if you look at history, there's always been a crash after a time of bubble and increasing wealth in terms of for example, stock markets going up. And I think it's psychologically very interesting that people tend to know the history and know that there is problems when a bubble is bursting or something is turning into a bull market, but it seems to be that they're a bit blinded and want to believe that it will affect the others and I can have total control and can get out of it on time. But for many people that is not the case, and it's also that then many people that come to a market when it's already going up too much and you know the price is already way too high when they start buying, is the problem that many people use too much money of their savings, you know, so they take too much risk, too much personal risk, because they turn a little bit greedy in terms of they want to make big profit and read the news of those, let's say 1% that made 10 cents into $1 million. But I gonna want to do my first video today about 3 different topics regarding cryptocurrencies. And the first one is gonna be about the possibility of a monopoly of the Bitcoin miners in turning the decentralized market into a false decentralized market. The second one is gonna be about the acceptance of Bitcoins and still another wave to be coming ahead of acceptance in a society, companies and governmental institutions to be paid and pay with Bitcoins to, in the end, avoid transaction fees and the need to exchange between first euro, Bitcoin, altcoin and reverse, and truly use the power of Bitcoin to avoid transaction fees. And the third topic is gonna be about how Bitcoin in the future has the possibility to bring smaller governmental currencies by the mechanisms of hyperinflation or deflation into trouble. And people in economies of hyperinflation, like for the case of Argentina, might be seeing Bitcoin as a more reliable or stable investment than their own country's currency. People mine a lot and think they can make money, but what actually happened was that the blockchains got very long because there has been so many transactions, so the needed graphic power increased a lot. And actually what we see if you do a bit of research is that it's not one single geek at home with one computer that is the one trying to do the data, the Bitcoin mining. It's more that it turned out to be a big business for some players, you know, in different countries. And I mean, if you look at some of their YouTube videos, they have electricity bills that go up to $1 million per month. So that means that the money they make with Bitcoin mining must be quite a lot. But the truth is, everybody on the blockchain topic always talks about the essential fact that it's like a decentralized thing. But what if you think about a market where suddenly you have instead of like a lot of single small players that in this case, for example, do the mining and have the blockchain on their computers, and the market turns into like let's say 4 or 5 big players worldwide that have the data centers where everything is saved, and turned into a false decentralized market. So well, I would call it now like a false decentralized market, because in the end that it means that the small ones get kicked out of the market because they're it's too expensive for them or not enough profitable for them to continue the mining. But there is a few big players that did literally economics of scale by saying, okay, we get so big that they gain a lot of power, because if only one of them would say, okay, we're gonna turn off our data centers, you have a problem about blockchain in terms of verifying, you know, the transactions. So I thought about the possibility, what if these kind of people get too much power on the market at some point, you know? It's like, does the whole topic of decentralization then make sense, you know? It's like, or literally are these people that created like big Bitcoin mining companies the ones that actually are the substitutions for the institutions, you know? It's like that in the end turns out to be even more risky, because they're under literally no governmental control of what's happening and have a certain negotiational power in front of let's say Bitcoin or clients or the whole like, you know, like system behind it. For example, let's say they would want to have more profit, you know, or more literally, you know, like get more out of their mining in terms of Bitcoin or altcoins being paid for it. So I see that as a risk, and I see it as a risk of something that needs to be considered, of how to keep the small players in the game in terms of distributing the risk and keeping the decentralized idea a true decentralized idea, and not the idea of, let's say, a couple of little players, you know, that turn into like, let's say, like an oligopoly or something like this, you know. A second thought I had about Bitcoin was the fact that what if Bitcoin gets so big that it literally takes over or overrules, has the possibility to overrule little, like certain currencies of some countries, and puts them under pressure because people start using Bitcoin too much. Take a small currency somewhere in a smaller country, you know, that has not as much market capitalization and can actually be kind of hijacked to like use the exchange rate as an advantage to make money. For example, in the case of Argentina, where Uber was prohibited credit card transactions in Argentina, they changed they changed their payment system to Bitcoin. So that means in Argentina, if you're an Argentinian, you can pay in Bitcoin your Uber, because you're not allowed to pay with it by credit card. Which is a small thing, you know, it's like, because it doesn't affect the country in any way. But imagine if there's gonna be too many transactions, especially in a country of hyperinflation of 30 to 40% of inflation per year, where people want to change in currencies that are more stable and or like more likely to still keep the value. So if you have the possibility of saying you're changing Argentinian pesos, if you stay pesos in the, so if you want to have the possibility to change Argentinian pesos, for example, to Bitcoin, you know, it's like, it's a good business in terms of security, or not even worse than when you have already like a 30 to 40% deflation, like hyperinflation per year, and the devalorization of your money is kind of like foreseeable, you know. It's like, and I think it could be very interesting if a certain country, you know, if too many people in a country out of panic start exchanging Bitcoins or another altcoin as because they might consider it at some point suddenly a safer deposit than their own currency. And this, in my opinion, can at some point in a scenario in some years put an incredibly pressure on governmental currency. And maybe it sounds a bit cryptic or weird when I'm talking about, and maybe not, I'm sure not all the cause and consequences of economics make sense in this case, but I think that it's just the fact that when you have like suddenly like seeing Bitcoin as a global institution, you know, it's like, which is higher ranked than a national currency at some point, it can have impacts on whole economies, you know, it's like positive and negative depending on how governments use it, foresee it, and adapt their legislation to, you know, it's like, so thinking about it in a big scale, it can also like, you know, like be a positive and negative effect for whole countries and their economies. Another issue is that still there is the problem that at the moment, you know, like Bitcoin is the mother of all cryptocurrencies, which means also that if you want to pay something or a service or good in cryptocurrencies, it is Bitcoin, and it most likely will stay like that. And you always have like, let's say, transaction fees between like changing from an altcoin to Bitcoin, which is okay when the prices are still so volatile that you can make a lot of money. So suddenly, let's say, an exchange rate between euros to Bitcoin, and you have literally 8 to 10% a fee in terms of taking out the money in like, you know, exchange rate transaction fees. It's a lot. And but people are willing to pay it at the moment, but this will change at some point. And the thing is that a currency like is always valid when it is accepted by a broad range of people, and that means the acceptance means that you have to have the possibility of enough options to trade it against something different, you know, it's like, and that means that if you imagine that there is a couple of Bitcoin cash machines, but there is whole countries still, even in Europe, that don't have one single Bitcoin like ATM or possibility where you can get it out. And I think that if Bitcoin takes off, there is this thing that if you imagine that suddenly some of the companies will have a big disadvantage by not having the possibility to pay in Bitcoin, you know, it's like as soon as some big players on the market, especially in the online business, will accept more broadly Bitcoin, you know, it's like, and also the fact that you have, say, you know, like companies pay their employees or give them the possibility to pay part of the salaries in Bitcoin, or that you, for example, can pay not only like online shopping but services, for example medical services in Bitcoin, for example going to your dentist and I can pay him in Bitcoin, you know, these kind of things are still on to come, but they can be very dangerous for certain businesses if they do not accept at the right time or too late these things, because their customers might shift to different, to make the purchases at different companies or different services. And why is that an issue? I consider that an issue because I think that people that have Bitcoins, they want to spend because they want to have it, like they want to spend and pay in Bitcoin, even though they are willing to pay a higher transaction fee because they believe in it, because they invested a lot of money in it, and they want to have a proof of concept in terms of that it is possible to use it as a currency, and that it is possible to like start using Bitcoin in your daily life, not only for certain special transactions when you go to, let's say, the Red Bull vending machine, that you can pay your Red Bull in Bitcoin. No, it's like you receive your or part of your salary from your employee in Bitcoin. You can spend it on healthcare, on food, on paying your rent in Bitcoin, you know. And it's like, this means that you're literally like without any transaction fees and without any exchanging first in dollars, euros between altcoins. And I think this is the issue that that the future still has to tell, you know, like who are the first big companies and that will pay their employees and then like start a whole system of acceptance, you know, because I think that the big wave of accepting Bitcoin in a daily life is still yet to come, and that's a big possibility, you know. But also from a business perspective, if you own a business, if you own your online shop, whatever, I think it's something you have to like implement at the right time to not lose out on it, you know, not losing customers and potential customers. Compare it with people that have an iPhone, when there was a lot of statistics out there that people that own an iPhone were willing to spend way more, or more likely or pay a higher price just because they have an iPhone, you know. It's like whether true or not, but maybe something like this I consider happening with Bitcoin at some point, once there will be the next wave of acceptance, you know. And this will go with the fact that one big player suddenly will accept it, and then the competition must also follow, but they're just followers in the end, because those companies that will introduce it first, you know, get the media, they get the press, you know, and they're the leaders. It's a little bit like, you know, it's like who's gonna be the first big one, and then the other ones are just running behind from the beginning. So if you have a business, if you run an online shop, and if you like, you know, like are aware of the volatility and the risk, you know, to cover the prices in terms of for your product, because there's also, of course, nowadays a risk by allowing to be paid in Bitcoin, because the prices can change so quickly. But I think that from a worldwide perspective, you know, it's like, it's a big possibility that you should, as a business owner, not miss out on. Okay, that was it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Tell me in your comments what you think is total bullshit, what I said, what you think is something to follow up. If you have any questions, I'm happy to pick the best of them and answer them in the next videos. And hope that my thoughts make sense and stimulate some of you to think about what Bitcoin is, instead of just something that you make a shitload of money with, but also with how you're gonna change society and the future with it. And in a couple of years, everybody will say, oh, it was so clear, why did nobody foresee that things like Bitcoin, etc. are gonna use it for? And I'm now back at my little bicycle and go and cycle back to the city. But before, I will make a stop at the beach, where I most likely will make my next video from. So have a good time, guys. Thank you for watching. See you soon.